Okay, this is the C++ tutorial part 4. Okay, when I went over logic with you guys, I think I forgot a few things, so let me quickly go over that, and this is the exact same project you guys saw last time. So, we went over, let me quickly, let's see, int I equals 10. Oh, I missed equal. Okay. That one. Okay. So we went over if I is greater than 10, do something, stuff like that. Okay. However, I believe I forgot to go over the not operator, which is the exclamation point. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. I think they ran out of symbols. But basically, it changes the evaluation. Okay, so we normally have I equals 10. If I is greater than 10, do something. Cout I is greater than 10, or something like that. However, because we have the not there, it will, instead of checking to see if I is greater than 10, it will check if I is not greater than 10. So in this case, it will actually evaluate to true. Because I is not greater than 10. I is exactly 10, and as you remember, we don't have the equal sign in there, so it is only if I is greater than 10. So if I run this, you'll end up seeing I is greater than 10, even though I've got the not operator there. Oh, that could be why. Oh, yeah. This sometimes happens. If you're going to use the not operator, you should probably do this. I is not greater than 10. Okay, so everybody makes mistakes. I is not greater than 10. Okay, so why would you maybe need that? Well, I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for it. Sometimes you just want to check if the opposite is true. So if you need not, oh, I forgot that again, didn't I? If you need not, the exclamation point is there for you. So, and you can combine that with other things. Most commonly I've seen, or perhaps used, is this. Okay. If I is not equal to 10, then I is not equal to 10. Okay. So, else cout I can't type today. I is I is, in case you weren't aware, you can do that. So, assuming I didn't mess anything up, I'm doing this part a little quick. I is 10. See? Okay, so if I change this to 90, I meant to hit 9, but 90 works too. Run it again, and we get, my screen decided to do that. Okay, I is not equal to 10. So if you wanted to check if a value was equal to something, this is a good way to do it. However, the topic of discussion today is various introductory data structures and the other way to do control structure. Control structure is just another way of saying, well, at least in this context, I mean a different way of doing these if-else things, aside from doing a very long if-else statement thing. Okay? So, what we're going to talk about first is switch statements. Now, switch statement is good for a lot of things. Mostly it's good for branching off. So instead of doing like 10 if-else statements, you can do one switch statement with a bunch of different cases. This is usually useful for menu type stuff, okay? So let's start out with int, I'm going to call it choice is equal to 0, cn choice, and I forgot that again, huh? Okay, cout, enter choice, yeah, you can do parentheses at the end of NL if you want, but it's not necessary. Okay, so enter choice. One thing to note is that switch statements, which I'll show you, switch only works with ints. You can either cast it to an int, which I guess I could show you at some point, but you don't really need to know about casting just yet. Just know that it works best with ints, because those are much easier for the computer to use as far as comparisons go. So we're going to switch on choice, and then the compiler will yell at you if you don't have a default case. So default colon, just make sure you have one. And if you didn't know, you can highlight stuff and then move it around. So if you wanted to move something somewhere, instead of copy and paste, you can literally highlight, drag, and drop. Of course, I didn't want to do that, so you learn something new every day, hopefully. Otherwise, your life is likely very dull. Okay, so how do we do it? With a switch statement, you have a switch statement, which it switches based on the choice. So whatever we enter, we get a different result. So for a case of 0, do something in here. And one thing that you should definitely know right off the bat is when you do a switch statement like this, break is needed. Okay? Let me just sort of show you what's going to happen here. Okay. Now, when this switch statement, let me just quickly do a, yeah, okay. Let's just do a while. Cont equal true. Okay, so if we do this, let me quickly do some other case here, case of 1, and I'm gonna see out, you chose, and if that's not how you spell chose, sorry, my English is terrible. It's not really my best subject. That's why I program. I'm better at it. Okay. So that should do nicely. I'm going to put the break in here, and you'll see why in a minute. cont equal false. Okay. So, first let's see. Okay, this should compile just fine. And, okay, enter choice. I hit 0. You chose 0, 1. You chose 1. Now I'm going to choose 2. And it gets out. Okay? Now if you'll remember, it didn't do everything if I did that. So, I'm going to do 2 birds with 1 stone here. I know I mentioned something about comments in one of the previous videos, however I never actually showed you what it means. Okay, so this is the easiest way I know to do comments. It's 2 slashes like this. And if you'll notice, it turned the whole line into a sort of yellow italic thing. It's the button next to shift, that slash. And what it does is it basically tells the compiler, which is what's going to take our C++ code and turn it into machine code. It tells the compiler to ignore everything beyond this little bit here. Okay? So you can put it wherever you want, and the compiler will, stop yelling. Well, it'll yell at me here, but you can comment out whatever you want. So after this here, I can say output 1 to the screen. Okay? So you get something like this. So this is a very good thing to do, comments. It'll basically keep you from, well, it helps you usually know what you wrote, because sometimes your code, after you write like tens of thousands of lines of code, you don't know, or you don't remember usually, what does what, and this helps remind you. Obviously this is very basic, but for later use, comments are invaluable. I mean, I've got comments all over the place on various pieces of code. You can see it online usually. If there's no comments, it's just because I, didn't feel like it. Okay, but now, I've removed the break via commenting it out. Now this is why we put break in there. Okay, I'm going to hit 0, and it's going to do everything. Now, that looks weird, because it didn't do that before when I had break, okay? This is why. Switch statements are a little weird in this regard. I'm not entirely sure why they do this. I guess it's some way that you might want to use them in the future, but the way a switch statement works is it switches on choice, and then it will go to the case that you define. So I hit 0, it goes to case 0. It then executes whatever's in here. However, it does not stop unless you, tell it to break, or you could also use return, but return will get us usually out of the function itself, which is main, which we're not going to go into that just yet. We're going to get there soon, but not yet. So if I run this again, and instead of hitting 0, I hit 1, it runs through everything. It goes to 1, hits this, and then it just goes through everything. So that's why you use break, because switch statements will go to the case you chose, and then they just keep going until they find a break or a default or something to get out of it. So usually the last thing you do in any switch statement is break, or if it's inside of some little function somewhere, you can return to get out of it. But you need to do something to make sure that you don't run through it too much. Alright. That more or less covers switch statements. Next, we're going to cover static arrays. Don't let the combination of words scare you or anything. It's not too bad. Okay? So, here is what we're going to do. An array is a container of sorts, and you can store, at least in this first demonstration here, a maximum number of objects, or variables. In this case, you don't need to worry about objects just yet. Okay, so let's say we have a list of numbers that we want to store. I know most of this stuff, you're like, a list of numbers, doesn't make any sense. You're right, you're probably not ever going to just store a bunch of numbers, but this is example stuff, okay? Now, I need to... You don't have to use array, okay? You can change it to whatever you want. I'm going to call it list of nums, okay? And in here, in this these little square brackets here, that's where you're going to put the maximum number of ints. Notice there's a type definition over here, int. So this is going to be an array of integers, okay? Now, how many do we want to store? Well, let's do 10, okay? I'm not going to initialize them to anything, and I'm going to change this from a while loop to a for loop. For int I equals 0, I is less than 10, and I plus plus, okay? That will allow us to go through this thing 10 times, which is exactly the same number as here. Now, one of the things that beginner programmers generally have trouble with is arrays, amongst many other things. But the tricky thing about arrays is how you sort of access the data, okay? So instead of doing a choice here, I'm going to call it num thing. I'm not going to initialize it to anything. Okay? Double clicking, Control V, or Control C, Control V, okay? So enter a number, and it will store the number, okay? I'm going to get rid of this switch statement here because we don't need it. Okay, so I'm going to enter a number. Okay, and that's going to put it there. Now here's the somewhat tricky bit, okay? I'm actually going to initialize the numbers here because if I don't and I hit enter too many times, bad things might happen. Okay. So, we're going to enter a number, we're going to put that number, cin, into our num thing, and then we're going to store our number in this list of numbers, okay? I'm going to put in here I. Why, you may wonder? Okay, this is how arrays work. You allocate a block of memory. In this case, the memory is whatever the size of integer, 32 bits, so I think I can't do math in 4 bytes, that's it, I think, yeah. Okay, 4 bytes, yes, you get 4 bytes times 10, okay? That's 40 bytes, so you're going to allocate 40 bytes of memory, and to access them, you're going to use this little operator here. So I'm going to access element I, and into it I'm going to put num thing. Okay? Now, if you'll notice and remember, I have initialized integer to 0. Arrays, when you're accessing their elements, start at element 0, not 1. 0 is the first element. And that means that although this is a size of 10, to access the last element is not 10. It is 9. Okay? That is something that throws people off a lot when they start out. So, I'm going to fill this array with 10 numbers that I enter. And then after I've filled it with numbers, I'm going to do int q because I can. equals 0. Q is less than 10Q plus plus. That works, yes, okay. So then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to see out list of nums Q end line. Okay. So, what is this going to do? It's going to iterate through this for loop here, store 10 numbers we enter, and then afterwards it's going to spit them back out at us. Okay? So, let's run this and make sure I didn't screw anything up. Enter a number, 10, 2, 3, 48, 59, 65, 66, 78, 78 again, and 58. Okay? So, there we go. We stored them, and then it spat it back out at us. Okay. So, that is the basic array structure. We have a certain amount of data, put stuff in it, get stuff out. Just remember that when you're accessing the array, it's from 0 to 1 minus this number, basically, okay? Now, one thing you might be thinking is to set this number here. So that you can make an array of whatever size you want during runtime. So once you've compiled the code, you could change this number. It doesn't work that way. That's one of the fickle things about arrays, is, well, this is a static array. This is the static array initialization. So you're gonna have to know the max number you want in advance and hard code that, and then run it. Now, there is various ways of getting around this, but they don't actually use a static array. They use different things, and we will cover them at another time. Now, the next thing I'm going to cover is, let's see. Let's start with functions, shall we? Okay. I already mentioned before that this is the main function, okay? What is a function? It's essentially a block of code that you can call into and then do something with it. Doesn't work for main because main is a Windows function, so you can't do much with main aside from just put stuff inside of it. But you can define your own function, okay? Now, a function can be created in two ways. You can either do a function header and then create the body of the function later, or you can do it all at once. I'll show you both right now, okay? So, right here, we have two for loops, okay? Now, I'm going to move them into their own methods. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, first I'm going to do a void. Now that's the return type. I'm going to name the function get 10 numbers, and I'm going to pass it an array of size 10 that I will call num array. This one I will I gave you one of those. Why are you still being mad at me? That's interesting. Oh. Might be because of this. I haven't passed an array in a while, so give me a minute here. I expected one of these, huh? How about this? That help? Apparently not. Huh. Okay. Well... let's see if that... let's see what all... why is it expecting that? Oh, that might be why. Oops. Okay, I forgot. I haven't used arrays in a while. There's other ways of getting around using arrays. I forgot to move this. Sorry. So this is a function header, okay? And you can declare it like this, and then use it later. So I'm gonna take well, I'm gonna actually use this real quick. So we have this. I haven't done this in a while. Let's see, Control V. Okay. Let's see. Control X, Control V, Control C, Control V. Okay. So that will define the function up here, and then we can use it. Pass into it list of numbers. Okay. Let's see. If I did everything right, nothing should change in the actual output. Okay, 10, 2, 48, blah blah. I'm literally just tossing my hand into the number pad and hitting enter. So, there we go. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, for one, modularity of code. One of the big things that C++ allows us to do is we write something once, and then we use that. We can use that a million times. Okay? So, you know, instead of having to write a for loop that takes in 10 numbers a million times, we can write it once and then call this. And we can do the same thing down here. Void output 10 nums. This way I'm going to define the function in the exact same at the exact same time, pretty much. Okay? So I have this, Control X. Control X is cut, in case you didn't know. Control C, Control V. Control Z. See? Control V. List of numbers. Okay. Now, I cannot recall if this is going to work or not. I may have to move something elsewhere. So, let's see. Yep. Okay. So, this is going to be a little bit of an intro into debugging. Now, look at down here. We have output 10 nums identifier not found. Okay. one of the big things that beginning programmers don't like is debugging, because they think the compiler hates them and it never tells them anything useful. Well, the compiler doesn't hate you, it's a computer, and it's trying to help you. Most of the time, it's a decent job of helping you. So, what happened here was it couldn't find the identifier of this. Well, obviously, I have IntelliSense telling me exactly what it is, but it has to do with how the compiler is going to compile this. It's going to look into main, and this, at compile time, when it tries to compile this, it has no reference to this. It's just like, where the hell is this coming from? Obviously, I've defined it down here, but it can't see below there. So I'm going to move it up here, and now it should compile. See? See? Super easy. So these are functions, and we write them, and then we use them. They are your friend, and you'll see a lot of them in your time. You're going to make a lot of them, because it makes our lives easier. Okay? Now, with functions, you will see these parentheses. That is an argument list, or parameter list, whatever you want to call it. And we put in this list anything we want to use inside our function. There's different ways of passing a variable to a function. Arrays are not one of the variables that you actually have a choice in the matter. Variables can be passed into functions, normally by value or by reference. Arrays are always by reference. Well, what's the difference? Okay, I'm going to define another function here. Void pass int by value, int who, and I'm going to change who equals 45. Okay, so I'm going to actually comment these out because we're not actually going to use them. Instead, we're going to define a new int called guy equals 0, cin guy, cin guy. And then I'm gonna pass int by value guy. Okay. Now whatever I put into here, cout guy endo. Okay. Now I'm going to do here another cout, because I have access to it for now. Who and okay. So, what is this going to do? Well, in short, I'm going to pass my integer into pass int by value, and I'm going to pass it in here by value, which means I'm going to make a copy of my integer and then put it in, which means I cannot actually affect what I put in, at least not out here. So, what does that mean? Well, unreferenced local variable. Don't worry about that, I already knew that. Okay, so 10, well, it output 45 and then it output 10. Now, why? Well, when I pass my guy variable into here, I'm going to make the compiler happy. we also don't need this, so that goes away too. When I pass my variable into this function, I'm passing it by value. So my copy is going to be assigned to 45, and then it's going to output. But the value over here, this guy variable never actually got set to anything inside this function. However, I can change that. To do that, we pass by reference, which is this little ampersand symbol here. Now, when I do it like this, it's going to actually change the value I pass into it. So guy, instead of being set to 45 in here and then put out, and then outputting whatever value I end up entering, it's going to actually change whatever value I enter to 45. So I enter 9,000 and it still gives me 45. Okay? Now, passing by reference is useful for, taking something in and modifying it. So if you just want to, modify a value inside of a function, that's a decent way to do it. Okay, so this gives you at least some level of modularity in your code. You can write functions, two different ways of doing it. You can write them all out above main, or you can declare them up here, use them in here, and then define them down here. Okay? So, that's enough to hold you over, I hope. The next one will cover other things that will help you become a better programmer much quicker. Well, they're probably actually just going to make you get much more complicated code very quickly, I suppose. So, till next time, see you around.